Good morning, good afternoon, and if you're watching this, the recording version, good day to you. Very excited to be with you today on DNA Day. And this is the first time we've done a webinar to celebrate DNA Day, and I'm really excited to be here with you. My name is Tom Osipian. I'm the product manager for GEDmatch. And with us is Kitty Cooper, who is an expert genetic genealogist, has been doing this a long time. And I convinced her to be a part of this today, and I'm really excited that she's here. Kitty, welcome, and please feel free to introduce yourself.
Well, thanks, Tom. I looked back in my blog post and discovered the first time I blogged about GEDmatch was 2012. Get that? December of
2012.
2012. So that
That's
was
amazing.
some time
13
ago.
years
So
ago.
that's how long I've been using the site. And and I guess I did my first DNA test in 2011. And I started my blog really to keep my relatives posted because they were tired of my endless emails. But then it became it kind of in those days went viral. Now, I'm not on TikTok, so too bad. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook,
There we
and
go.
and of course my blog. So I've been doing genetic genealogy for 13 years, 14 years, and using the GEDmatch almost that long. Is everybody ready? Okay, let's go. Now I will not see my face, so one of the things I miss is seeing people. So I have no idea if you guys are experts or beginners. So some of you will be bored, some of you will be overwhelmed. Just enjoy it, and if the recording will be there. And what's more, my slides are always online. So you can go back and go through these slides more carefully, and everything's clickable in my slides because I use this site called slides.com. So you don't have to take notes. The slides are there. And today I'm doing a different approach from many of my recent talks. I'm going to talk about how I've actually used GEDmatch to solve mysteries in my own family.
And,
So,
and Kitty, before you jump in, I do want to let everyone know that we will be doing a Q&A at the end of after your presentation. So if you're watching this and you have a question, there is a submit a question section of this GoToWebinar interface. So feel free to put your question there. And we typically do get a lot of them. We'll try to go through as many of them as we can in the hour time that we've allotted. And then as it is DNA Day, I will also remind you all of the great promotion we're having right now at the end of this session about our tier one tools that we have a great discount on right now. So with that, Kitty, I'll turn it back over to you.
no problem. So, I actually started with GEDmatch because I had tested at 23andMe, and I had a cousin who tested at Ancestry, and another cousin who'd only tested at Family Tree DNA. So, I was using it to compare apples and oranges, so to speak. But GEDmatch has a nice template that actually works for comparing these different tests. So, why is GEDmatch the best place to do this? Because you can upload your DNA test from Ancestry to MyHeritage or Family Tree DNA, but MyHeritage doesn't show the X. Family Tree DNA, although they've done some recent stuff, didn't show comparisons of third parties to each other or triangulations. I mean, they have better tools now, but it's still not like GEDmatch. Neither shows the fully identical regions, which I'll discuss later. And there are way more segment level tools at GEDmatch for those of you who are expert and like to look at specific segments. So here is the list of free tools on my homepage, or at least some of them. Unique to GEDmatch are two tools which I find extremely useful for figuring things out. One is Are Your Parents Related?, which I'll talk about a little, and the other is being able to compare the X chromosome. That's the 23rd chromosome. Men have only one, whereas we women have two. That's why we're girls. And another biggie is because of the break-in at 23andMe a few years back, all of the sites shut down the ability to download all the segments where you match your matches, except for GEDmatch. But of course, it's a tier one tool and you have to know how to do it, which I'll tell you about later. Okay, so let's talk about, I get a new match. What do? I have a new match, say at Ancestry. First, I convinced them to upload to GEDmatch and send me the kit number. Now, some of my relatives can't be bothered to figure that one out, so they just send me their data. Too many kits now. But anyway, then at GEDmatch, I check to see if there are any anomalies in their kit. First of all, there's something called the kit diagnostic utility, so you can see that it uploaded properly and everything's good. Then there's the Are Your Parents Related tool. We're going to discuss that quite a bit. Then you can do the one-to-one autosomal DNA comparison. That's where you compare the actual segments where you match. You can do that for the X, which none of the other sites except Family Tree DNA let you do. Then finally, my favorite tool, you can run the people who match both kits. Okay, and that will often tell you what family this new match belongs in.
And these are all free tools that you just went over.
Those are all free tools. And we will discuss the paid tools toward the end, which I find invaluable. All right, so one day I opened up my ancestry and I had a third cousin match. That was huge, 166 centimorgans? My goodness. How come I don't know this person? She got in contact with me or I with her, and the story is, well, she didn't know who her daddy was. Okay, all right. Well, I didn't match anyone on her mother's side, so we knew it was on her dad's side. So how did I approach this? If you click on that on Ancestry, you'll get what it suggests are the relationships. Of course, it's much better at GEDmatch. So, of course, I said, please, please upload to GEDmatch. Now, many people, particularly in my age group, aren't that technically competent, but they can make a username and password at a new site, and then there's this wonderful upload page at GEDmatch, which really tells them everything they need to do. It will do a specific to the site that they're coming from, how to get that data, and then there's more information on how to upload it. One of the tricks used to be that on a Mac, the download would magically be unzipped, and of course GEDmatch needed a zipped file, so people run into trouble with that. Anyway, I've become tech support for many of my family members, and we usually get this done. Otherwise, they just send it to me and I do it for them. Okay, next step. Is her kit any good? So there's this DNA file diagnostic utility, and it gives you a long gobbledygook. And yes, that kit number is one of my own kit numbers. See, I'm not worried about people looking at my kit. I didn't want to put her kit in. It's so many places here, and trying to erase them is tricky when you're making slides, when it's there that many times. The important thing is to see status good. Status good means it uploaded properly. There's a template at GEDmatch which lets you compare these apples and oranges when this particular kit is an old kit from 23andMe. And if I want to compare it to an Ancestry kit, it'll actually work. The next anomaly I worry about is, are your parents related? People from endogamous populations like European Jews or Polynesians or Mennonites will often find that their parents are cousins, which they didn't know, third, fourth cousins, because it was a limited gene pool and there was a lot of intermarriage. Barrel's result was negative. This is what a negative result looks like. I mean, there's a lot of stuff here, but what you're looking for is no shared DNA segments found. Okay, that's what's it going to look like if there were? Here's an example of a Jewish friend of mine. Here we have a single segment match, and this is really not that unusual. In fact, about half of the Jewish people I have worked with have a result like this. So I started collecting that because I found it very interesting. So if you are Jewish or have a friend who's Jewish, have them read that blog post and have them check their results. But most of us, our parents are not related. The other thing for figuring out a relationship is X. That's the sex chromosome, chromosome 23. If you're a guy, you have a Y and an X, so you only have one X. So that X is going to be a recombined X from your mother. So two brothers won't necessarily match on their X because their mother could have given them different X. But two sisters will always match if they share a dad. They'll have a full X match because their dad only had one X chromosome to give them. And it doesn't recombine with another X because there isn't another X. So the X is often extremely interesting for figuring out relationships. Lack of X isn't necessarily significant, but having a good sized X is. Oh well, Beryl doesn't share any X with me. Okay, next I do the one-to-one. And one of the things I like to do is I click that box that says display only chromosomes that have matched segments. That makes the result a little bit smaller, and I don't really need to see all the segments where we don't, all the chromosomes where we don't match. So you have three choices as to how to display it. Graphics and positions is my least favorite because it's kind of busy. I like to sometimes look at graphic only, but then for actually doing research, I like position only. That's the numbers. So how does this look with Beryl? Okay, here is Beryl's one-to-one with me, graphic only. So what does this mean? Well, everywhere there's a blue line, it's a matching segment. It's where she and I have the identical DNA along that segment. So if we look at, say, chromosome 10, the second one down, it's a nice chunk, and you'll see that it's all yellow above with a couple little green lines. The green lines are where it matches on both sides. You see, the trick is you and I, everywhere, like here, chromosome 10, I have two chromosome 10s, one from dad, one from mom. So sometimes a smaller match can be pieces from each one. That's why we like the longer segments, because they're more likely to be true matches. But here, as you can see, there are a couple of places where she matches me on both sides. But they're not big enough to actually register, other than a tiny little green line. And all those little red lines, that's where we don't match at all. Now, this is the numeric. You might have noticed looking back that this was like 150 some centimorgans, actually slightly less than ancestry, which is unusual. But here we get 204. Why is that? Oh, well, I tricked you. This is versus my dad. I compared her to my dad. Very useful to have a parent tested. And she matches my dad even more heavily than me and in all the same places as me plus some more, which is about what you would expect since dad didn't give me everything he got from the ancestor that he shares with Beryl. So those are pretty good numbers. And the other thing I look at here is the size of the largest segments. Here we have the largest segment of 33 and then a 29, two 29s, a 21. The bigger the largest segment is, the closer the matches tend to be because over time, with endless recombinations, these things break up. You'll find the close family will have big, big segments. And I talked about the FIRs. That's fully identical regions. Here, this is not Beryl. Everywhere where it's green, remember the little green lines on the first one where we have a solid green bar, that's a fully identical region. And the blue is the matching segment. Fully identical means both sides are the same. Got the same from mom and from dad as this person. So what do you think this is? Yeah, two full siblings. Okay, the green areas. So this is myself with my brother, and there are lots of areas where we got the same DNA on, say, chromosome 5. We got the same from dad and from mom, and that's how it looks. There are other cases besides full siblings. Well, for example, cousins where two sisters married two brothers, or three-quarters sibs. For example, a husband dies and the mother marries his brother. And subsequent children will not be full siblings or half siblings. They'll be three-quarter siblings. Okay, now finally, number 5. My favorite, people who match both kits. So I put in Beryl And I always put the new person in first so that it'll be sorted by her biggest matches. If you put yourself in first, it'll be sorted by your biggest matches. So be sure you put the new match in first. What do you see here? Are you having a look? Wow, there's something huge. 911 Segamorgans with my third cousin Diane. I can't believe it. Okay, so now what do we know about that? Does that jump out at you? Yeah, she's probably Diane's first cousin, right? I mean, 911, that's first cousin number. So all I now had to do was email Diane and say, hey, now I know Diane is related on her mother's side to me. Her mother was a Munson descendant. So I said, did your mom have any brothers? And we were able to figure out which of her two brothers fit the facts in this case. So now Beryl knows who her dad is and has a whole new family. This, by the way, the middle old guy is my great grandfather, and it was his brother who is the relative I share with Diane and Beryl. But still, it's a picture of Munson's in about 1914, and it's appropriate. So Beryl added her dad to her tree at Ancestry, and there it goes. Through lines connected us. And she is, in fact, my third cousin. So cool.
Oh, very cool. That's really awesome how you walked us through that whole process there, Kitty.
Well, thanks, Tom. It was really fun to do. But, I realized afterwards, because Beryl was a close relative, that I could have
Hmm.
figured the same thing out using the one-to-many with my tag groups, because I have
Mm.
colors set up for my different great-grandparents' lines. So if I did a one-to-many with her, look what comes up. The very first thing has a green, which is my Munson line, and again, that third cousin of mine, um, Diane. So the workhorse of relative searching when you just want to look at all your new relatives is the one-to-many. So understanding the one-to-many is key to using GEDmatch.
Mm.
And I love tag groups. I don't know how many people even know about them, but of course, much to your surprise, I'm sure I have a blog post about setting them up. But I like to do it for my 8 great-grandparent lines, because it just sorts it out into groups. So let's have a look at this. I know it's probably ridiculously small, but the one-to-many which has rolled off the screen, has a select box. So if you have tier 1, you can select a whole bunch of people and do all kinds of fun stuff with them. The next one is just a number. Then we have the kit number, and the kit number gets highlighted with the tag color you have selected. So if you have a tag group and that kit is in your tag group, and that kit is on this page of one-to-many for your new relative, it'll show in color there. I'll tell you how. Then the next thing is the name they've selected. These are all my family, so I don't have to get rid of them. Then the email address. Then do you see that notes add? This is my favorite new feature, and my most recent blog post is all about it. You see that one that says dad? Okay, it makes it easier for me to see what things are. But I typically do put in the family line or some identifier there when I figured out something. Then you see the Jed wiki next to dad. That means not only does he have a GEDmatch here, a GEDcom here at GEDmatch, a family tree set up here, but he also has one over at WikiTree, um, which is really nice because WikiTree will, if the person that you're looking at also on WikiTree. It's a one world family tree, only one copy of each person. So WikiTree might be able to find the relationship for you. Then we have sex. Then we have these two numbers here. Now this is a tier 1 listing. The tier 1 match, which if I click on the total CM, it'll tell me the likely relationships and the percentage of each. If I click on the largest, it will give me the one-to-one. And now There's where we do the tag groups. You see that tag groups there, right here? We're all the way to the right. Maybe I have a little arrow. Yes, I do. These red arrows I put in to highlight things. I wish that one were the default. Are you listening, Tom? I think
I'm
one
listening.
all tag groups. The problem with all is that I'll have five. If a kid is in five different tag groups, then all of them you'll have that kid five times in the listing. So I'd rather just have one, but it's really useful. Okay, here's some more work on the headings. Maybe this one's easier to see. The GED, the wiki, the sex. This is from the regular one-to-one, so there's no, everything blue is clickable. If you click on the kit number in that first column, you'll get the one-to-one for that kit, which if you click that tag group thing can often tell you what's happening. And for this is the one-to-one for Beryl. As you can see, Diane's at the top. Then under notes, you can put whatever you want to put. You can see that I have put dad and I have put mine because I have so many kits here. Mine is the main kit I use. That's my combined kit. That's a whole nother thing. And you can look at my blog for how to combine kits, a cool feature here. Okay, so I've discussed these columns for the most part. Here you click the largest and it goes to the one-to-one. What about on the right side of the page? You see that match button that's blue? That gets you to which kits match these two kits, which is one of my totally favorite features. Do you see the highlighted in red where under overlap? Okay, overlap is one of the problems with comparing these apples and oranges is not every kit is on the same chip. Different companies, they keep changing and refining because one of the things they're trying to do is get the ethnicity part working better because it just doesn't for many companies. All right. A question I'm also often asked is which is the best? None of them are great. Ancestry's gotten to be pretty good at the beginning. 23andMe was the best. I always do like the AdMixit, GEDmatch. Nothing is perfect because guess what? Our deep ancestors moved around a lot more than anyone realized. Okay, that red means that there isn't enough overlap between the kits to be confident of this comparison. So when it's in red like that, it means it's not the greatest comparison. All right. Now, as I said, match is my favorite because you get which kit matches, and you can also do the X here. And what else do you see here? Do you see under haplogroup? Okay, there's the haplogroup for your mitochondria, which you get from your mom, and the haplogroup from your Y, which you only have if you're a guy. Okay, because your Y is categorized. And you see how there is one that says Mito Y DNA? That means you can click over to that website to learn more about this particular kit. So here is, and again, my slides are online, so if you go to my slides, you can actually click that URL to read about tag groups, setting them up and using them. And here, this is an example with lots of different colors from my own one-to-many, which is great fun.
Yeah, and Kitty, the tag groups that you're going to go into, it looks like right now, and how you use them to organize known relatives, and then how that kind of plays out as you're looking at new matches. That's something that I mentioned when I was at Roots Tech earlier this year, and I shared that with some people, and it was kind of like light bulbs were going off in people's minds of, oh wow, this is a great feature that I didn't know about. So I'm excited you're talking about it right here to share a little bit more with those watching of how it can really help them in their research efforts.
Yeah, it's like if you use the colors at Ancestry or the colors at MyHeritage, it lets you organize your matches into which family line they belong in. Now, I like to do each great grandparent. Some people
Hmm.
do, and then I also use one or two for location areas. Plus, I usually have one tag group for things I'm currently researching, which makes it easier in the multi-kit analysis to just bring up that group with one of these other groups. So, I mean, to me, it's just an invaluable tool. Um, to get there, at the very top of your page, when you log into GEDmatch, you'll see your own profile. And gee, I'm user number 1208. I bet that's a low number. And then you click on Manage. And if you click on Manage, you'll get to a page with a set of tabbed headings like across the top here. Click on Tag Group Management and you get to this page where you can actually create tag groups and change the ones you already have. Okay, you can edit the ones you have, you can change them, you can transfer one, but last time I used it, I didn't get to keep it. There was not really a share function. I'd like to give one to my brother, but keep my own copy. So it's not perfect. I should talk to Tom about making that better. But if more people use tag groups, they might also talk to him about making that better. Anyway, I love my tag groups. So then you pick a color, and I like to keep the colors the same as the ones I use on Ancestry and MyHeritage. So when I see green, I know it's Munson. When I see purple, I know it's Wold. Um, that's how I like to do it. And here's when you actually you can go and display your groups. And one of the things you can do in a group, like we're looking at my Wold group here, is you can change who's at the top, there are a number of functions where the one at the top is compared to everybody else. So that's very useful. And you can remove a kit, and of course you can manually add kits, and editing the group attributes will let you change who's in there. All right, here's the biggie. How many of you have even considered mapping your own DNA to see which segment comes from which ancestor? Huh? This is the advanced stuff. Now, this is from a long ago post I did about my Wold segments, and I wrote a little tool that would take my Excel sheet and make a map. So that's in that blog post if you're interested. GEDmatch is the only site that lets you download all the matching segments that you have with your DNA relatives. This is a tier 1 function, the DNA segment search. You put in your kit number. The default number of kits is never enough for me. You might make it bigger. The more you put in, the longer it'll take, but it will do it. And the other thing is at the bottom of this form, there's a show graphic bar for chromosome. Since my objective is to use this in an Excel sheet, I usually unclick that. The default is clicked. Okay, so when that tool finishes, you get this nice thing where you can download the comma-separated data file, the CSV file. Now, CSV files are wonderful because they're text files, but you can load them into Excel or any other spreadsheet you might use, like OpenOffice. The result looks like this. The primary kit that was used, the matching kit, which chromosome, and the start and end positions. Now you see it says B37, that's the build that it's referring to. You don't have to worry about it. Start and end are what matter. How big the segment is, and how many SNPs are in the segment. And the way to think of this is centimorgans, how big it is a measure of how important it is of the frequency of recombination, whereas SNPs is an actual physical number. How many of those? Okay, and they're not the same. There's no direct correlation between SNPs and CMs, centimorgans. You just want to have a lot of both of them. Now, here's the match's name and their sex and their email. Now, I rearrange all these columns and add quite a few once I put it into Excel, because I want to track which ancestor. Notice all the pretty colors? This is my dad's map, a section of my dad's match on chromosome 3. And you can see I have added column for I've moved the male or female and the kit number to the beginning and the name. And then I have added a column for the source, which is FT is family tree DNA, and my age, my heritage. And then I've added a column for the ancestor when I figured out which ancestor provided this particular segment. And then when I have triangulating relatives, I color them so that they're all the same color. So you can see that this is a nice colorful thing. I have a few more columns that you're not seeing. One of them that's critical is who else matches. Now, in the case of my dad, a lot of these matches can be sorted out because I match some of these segments and my brother matches others. Of course, sometimes we both match. Excuse me. Okay, now this was a really weird one. I got an email from Vienne, a Cambodian, who knew his fourth grandfather was a Norwegian sailor. He had a single segment match with my dad, just one, but it triangulated. When I looked at it, I went back to that sheet. If you look on the sheet, you see VN, he's sort of outlined in black, and you see it's a aqua color, and all these people who descend from Amund Tveiten V. Now, how can I just put one instead of two? Well, he had two wives, and these people descended from the other wife from us. So I knew it was him, and he was born on Farm V. Now, actually, in Norwegian, V is pronounced as W, so it's Farm We. And many of them who came to America spelled it We, W-E-E. That's actually a farm in Etna, which is in Hordaland, Norway. It's about halfway between Stavanger and Bergen, and it's a beautiful, rich agricultural area. I went there in 2015, and I looked at my cousins. I said, "Why did my great grandfather ever leave here? It's so beautiful." And they said, "Hey, come back in the winter. You see those mountains? They block the sun for part of the day, and there isn't that much sun to start with." All right. So here is Vienne again. I'm probably mispronouncing it, where he's triangulating with all of these cousins who are descended from my great grandfather. I might not have all those greats correctly, who born in 1772 on that farm. And these cousins all match each other on that segment and Vienne, and that's what we call a triangulation. So we can be confident when they all match for the same segment and it's a good size, like some of them it's 24, 25 to my dad, that it's from a single ancestor. And I know who the ancestor is for the 24s and 25s. Now, Vienne's piece is much smaller, so it's likely for an ancestor of Amon V's. And I was unable to figure out which ancestor of his sailed the high seas, although many of them did. So that's as far as I got with it. I suppose a Norwegian genealogist might do better.
It,
Second and
it's
third cousins
it's
are magnificent for figuring these things out. They give
and
you
what I
the
wanted to
directions.
sorry, Kitty,
Go ahead.
please yeah, the fact that it's a very small segment that was shared with your father, right? 8 centimorgans is just
Hmm.
above that threshold, right? Of around, typically 7 or higher is what is the recommendation of looking at segments that are that size or larger. So pretty amazing, that
Yeah,
it's
but look
a
at the
true segment.
SNPs. If the SNPs are bigger than 1,000, then I give more weight to the smaller segment.
Oh, that's a good tip right there then. So this, even if it's 7 or 8, look at that SNP number. If it's more than 1,000, that's kind of your way
That's
of,
kind of, yeah.
yeah.
So, yes, a small single segment can be real sometimes. So this was really exciting because he knew about his fourth grandfather being Norwegian. I mean, he's a Cambodian. You understand? Vian is from Cambodia. All his other ancestors are from Cambodia. So that was fun. Okay, then I got another one of these. I have a big match with a guy. Now look at that. That's a family tree.
Wow,
Is that impressive?
that's
I
amazing.
I got another single match to my dad and my brother is in a pileup area. That's what we call. I have 100 or so matches with this one segment. So I'm always dubious about a pileup area, but they're all triangulating, and this guy figured out our common ancestor. well, actually, Genie.com figured out he lived in 1490, was born around 1490. So this guy's like my 12th cousin. And so maybe it is a 12th son of Morgan pileup area. Maybe these other people are descended from this guy too. Certainly a fun avenue of research, and he went off and is to figure that one out. So what I did is I if I use that segment search on the segment and see how many people match in the pileup area, right? But then I say, oh, oops, of course, Dad has segments on, both his chromosome twos, one from his mom and one from his dad. So I need to separate them. How can I separate them for this comparison? Oh, wait. My brother has the same segment. He only got one of them, right? Dad couldn't give him both those segments, so I took my brother's kit and made a phased kit. In other words,
Mm.
because my dad's tested and my brother's tested, I could make a kit for my brother that was only the DNA he got from my dad. That is another cool tool at GEDmatch. If you have a parent tested, this can be incredibly useful.
So, and just can maybe walk people through what this is because it's yeah. What is phased? What's this tool doing? What's the benefits of it?
It's Okay, what I'm doing is taking my brother's kit and my father's kit and creating a kit that's only the DNA my brother got from his father. So it's half his DNA, the
Mm.
half he got from my dad. And then that kit can be used to investigate this particular segment because my brother only got one segment from dad and I got the other one.
So it really can speed up a little bit of the research process because then you're not trying to figure out is this from one side or another. You know it's from the father's side, right? Your father's side.
Right. I am researching a segment my dad has, but I don't know if it's his mother's side or his father's side, but I know
Hmm.
it's only one of them. My brother got the segment. I did not.
Hmm.
Therefore, I can use my brother's kit to isolate that segment by creating a phase kit of what my brother got from my father. And that these phased kits can be invaluable for your research. I really love the phased kit.
And the key though is you need your parents' DNA uploaded to GEDmatch,
You
correct?
do, although I wasn't going to go into it. My mother passed away long before DNA testing, but I was able to test both of her sisters, and between them and various cousins, I was able to generate a Lazarus kit for my mother. So I can use that. But typically, I just use my Aunt Trudy because that'll get most of it. But anyway, I was
Got
able to. There's another tool. Oh, there's so many tools here at GEDmatch. You can go crazy playing with them. But yes, if you have enough people tested on one side of your family, particularly sisters of the dead person or brothers, you can create a Lazarus kit. Anyway, so now I only had 54 people to investigate, and I sent them off to the guy with the deep tree to have fun with.
it.
Okay, this is less fun. I know some of you know that my husband died a few years ago. He had a prostate cancer that went, after 12 years, went really bad, went to his bones. And it turned out one of his final um, oncologists had him do a DNA test with a company that tests for health issues. You don't want to use these personal DNA companies for your health issues, although some of that stuff may be in there. I Most of them try to remove it, but I discovered that he had a bad BRCA2 mutation, a deletion in his BRCA2 gene. And I guessed because his mother's sister died of breast cancer. I don't know if you all know, but the BRCA2 gene is responsible for mopping up a lot of those cancers, particularly the ones related to your reproductive systems, apparently. And we all have hundreds of cancer cells in our bodies, hundreds of them. But our BRCA1 and BRCA2 genes, they go to work cleaning that up. If you have a faulty one, you're way more at risk of getting cancer. Now, I knew my husband's mother's sister died of breast cancer. So I emailed all of his maternal cousins saying there might be some concern here. And I heard back a few weeks later, one of those cousins, 30 years old, did a mammogram. She already had breast cancer. So
Wow.
I may have saved her life. Who knows? I mean, it was kind of great to find it so early before it was a problem.
Sure.
So then I felt, oh, I really, how do I approach this? So what I
Uh-huh.
did is I went to the NIH site. I hope it's still there, and found out this blog post talks about how I related the where that gene is to where the SNPs are, and how I
Hmm.
found a segment that would correspond would have the bad allele in it. Okay, actually it was a deletion, but the segment. Although most of these companies remove some of those health issues, and so I believe does GEDmatch, the
Hmm.
larger segment, if you match on the larger segment, you're likely to have that bad bit in there too. So I then went through, I found 9 people who matched them and I emailed them all. I only heard back from one of them, but for me, it was something I had to do to help cope with his loss. It made
Hmm.
me feel better. If I saved one life, great.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
this was, anyway, this blog post talks about how I did that if you have a health issue. Now, I think those of us who have health issues, and I don't, well, I do, but I'm not worried about them because I'm too old for life insurance. Um, that's a part of the reason people who've been deleting their kids. I don't care if you look at my kit because there's nothing in there terrible except I have some problems with gluten. But other than that, go ahead. It's not my social security number. It's not my bank account. But obviously, if there's something in there you don't want people to know, I can understand why people would delete their kits. But I'm in favor of knowing. Anyway, that's
Yeah.
it.
Just a word about that. GEDmatch, when a user uploads their DNA data from any of the testing sites, we get rid of any SNPs related to any health information. So we only keep SNPs in your DNA kit and profile in GEDmatch that relate to um, familial relations, right? So those genes that are about kinship. Um, so the work that you did, Kitty, is amazing to kind of figure out, okay, where would it be if it was there and that matching segment, because we do show segment data like you showed already. Um, so I just wanted to make sure everyone knows, like, there's no way you can kind of find health information out using GEDmatch. But in this case, this is kind of like, I think, a unique example of a way to make people aware that this could be something that your late husband's relatives could be potentially dealing with.
Yeah, I even did something similar for a client of mine, checking, who had a bad mutation, checking
Hmm.
among her trusted relatives and letting her know which ones she should notify. They might, just because the segment matches doesn't mean they have it, but they
Hmm.
might.
Hmm.
Because as you said, that part of the segment has been removed.
All right, time for Q&A.
Hey, what did I do here? Oh, that was supposed to be,
I don't know. Maybe
I
it went
don't
to
know
some
what
kind of
happened, but
it's question time. All
yeah.
right. So we do have a number of questions that have come in. One of them is, what is the website where your slides are located? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put that in the chat right now, so that you are if you are curious where can find this slide deck as well as other of Kitty's slides, you can see that at it's slides.com/Kitty Cooper. Um, and let me go ahead and see what we have here. So Sue
Yeah, and I
asks,
have
oh,
a lot of GEDmatch presentations there that go into all kinds of tools. But today I focused on how I've actually used GEDmatch for my family mysteries. Go on.
Sue asked, do you have any experience with Lazarus tool? You did touch on that, but is there anything else you'd like to share about the Lazarus tool and how you've been able to use that, and maybe some tips or tricks?
No, I just generated the one kit for my mother, and as I said, I
Mm,
don't use it that often because her sister is a good substitute. Um, but I think a good tip is to read the documentation, and the more relatives you have, the merrier. And I, how to use my father so they could separate out what was from him for me and my brother. Um, yeah, it was fun. It's worth
awesome.
doing if you have enough relatives tested to get a good result.
All right, Carrie asks, do you have any suggestions on what to say to get a response when reaching out to a match who doesn't appear to be really interested in family history other than kind of discovering their ethnicity? She's got some photos from Norway. She's on her grandfather's side. She's trying to identify. So any tips on that when you're reaching out to a match on, probably one of the other sites or even through GEDmatch?
Well, I typically offer them information about their family history, which, as you said, they may not be that interested, but if they just discovered that they were from Norway and you can show them pictures of the farm, um, what you I have a blog post on Blaine Bettinger did a wonderful talk called Begging for Spit about how to get people to test.
Mm,
But I also did a blog post on how to get people to respond. And sometimes people don't even see your messages
mm,
on a place like Ancestry. I mean, on GEDmatch, it's easier. You get an email address, and people do usually see their emails. Although I do remember one time when I was tracking somebody down and they weren't responding. I do also, because I do this sometimes for money, I belong to various paid search sites, and I used a site called Been Verified, and I discovered that that person had passed away about a year ago.
mm,
It was very sad, but it meant I could get in touch with his widow and his son and put them in touch with their new second cousin. And everybody
mm.
was really happy about that. So it turned out okay. But when people don't respond, sometimes it's because they don't see the message. Um, and you have to, or they think you're spam or that you want something from them. You want
Sure.
money, you want this. So what I try, my best suggestion is offer them something. You know, say, gee, I have pictures of your great grandparents. Would you like them? Start by offering to give them something and make it clear you don't want anything from them. You're just researching family history.
That's good. Lanice asked a question about the shared matches with Barrel when you were showing I think the matches one or both tool, and that is similar to Ancestry's shared matches of matches, correct? I believe it is.
Yes, it is. And
Yeah.
with Pro Tools, you can these days, when I did this, I didn't there was no such thing as Pro Tools, but these
On
days I
Ancestry. Yeah.
on Ancestry. And also part of the problem for me was that a number of my relatives were only tested at 23andMe. So
Mm,
to get a good result, I needed to use GEDmatch. But these days I could have figured it out with just Ancestry. It's all true, but I still love the tools at GEDmatch. Um, yes, it's similar. It's what we call ICW, in common with, which
hmm
every site has some form of, um, and it's a question of how good it is. I
mm,
mean, my heritage, family tree DNA, they all have some form of in common with.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I think, obviously, I think GEDmatch is better because you get more details and you have an email address instead of a dumb messaging system. But hey, that's my opinion.
All right. Eileen asked this question. So, if your grandparents and, of course, great grandparents are deceased and had no DNA test done, how can one know one is related through DNA?
Talk as many second and third cousins into DNA testing as you can
Mm,
because you share those ancestors with them. And that's how I've isolated the DNA I have from my great grandparents, my second cousins, and also third cousins. And I mean, I suppose it helps that I blog about this and I'm sweet and convincing, but and when I travel around the country, I try to have a meal with my new cousins. But that's how you do it. Second cousins are gold mines because it's a lot. You share a lot of DNA with them, and they share great grandparents with you.
Excellent. Great suggestion there. June asks, it says, I only have a sister, not a brother. All of my known relatives from my parents' generation were gone before I got interested in genealogy. Um, any thoughts on her strategy in GEDmatch or kind of matching in general? And she did just sign up for tier one.
Well, again, the strategy is get as many of your more distant cousins to test as you can talk into it, and you may meet a few of them just by using the matching systems. There is, if you have letters from where they might have licked the stamp from ancestors
Mm-hmm.
or hair, there is a place that will try to get DNA from them. It's not particularly, it's expensive and that's not guaranteed, but I think, they'll see if they can do it before you get hit with a big charge. I believe it's called To the Letter or something like
Yes.
that. If you Google it, I haven't personally used it, but I've been considering it.
So actually, one of our attendees, Georgie, um, talks about this in their question, and actually, I think it's more of just this kind of sharing their experience. Um, yeah, so they figured out their identity of their grandmother's father using DNA matches from all the ponds, um, and because they don't know the identity of her mother, I'm not sure who her is, but they resorted to using artifact DNA, and to the letter, DNA was able to extract usable DNA from a stamp on a 1977 postcard, which is amazing. And
Wow.
and and now that's on GEDmatch. So it looks like there's no close relatives on her mother's line that have tested yet. And then another problem is that Georgie's dad was her only child to have kids, and she was able to get his DNA tested before he passed. So yeah, she's going through all of the smallest matches one by one. Definitely, she's appreciative of all the useful tools on GEDmatch. Any suggestions for her, Kitty, that you might have?
Well, one of the tools that I didn't touch on that's quite useful is clustering, because
Mm,
it will, if you, and you can fiddle with and I have a couple of blog posts on it, but clustering will group your matches into usually grandparent lines or great grandparent lines, depending on how you
hmm
fine tune it. And that can help you focus. And clustering is also available at MyHeritage. By all means, make sure your DNA is in all the pools and get all your cousins to test. That's my usual. Um, and people get worried about it. So don't forget my line. Hey, your DNA is not your social security number or your bank account. There's nothing to worry about unless you have some health condition you don't want the world to know about. And if you find such a one, we'll just delete that DNA.
Yeah, yeah. I think someone mentioned something, a good point about the to the letter DNA and extracting that DNA from an artifact is that you don't really know who licked that stamp. So that's kind of the word of caution, right, about that that specific method of getting DNA from a stamp.
Right. You don't know for sure who licked it. It's only like 90% or 80% that it was the person who sent it. It could have been their maid or their butler
Yeah, exactly.
or or their friend or
Yeah.
or their
Margaret asked,
child. And
yeah.
my mother used to get a for a Christmas card. She would make a big sponge wet and put the stamps on the
hmm
sponge, so you wouldn't get any DNA from her.
Yeah, exactly. Margaret asked, can I use GEDmatch to find people who match my kit? Or do I need to know the person and their kit number for it to be useful? And I think we know the answer is you can use GEDmatch to find people who match your kit, and that's the
Yeah,
one-to-many
the
tool
one
that
to
has.
many tool is amazing, and that will. And I went over what some of the things on that mean and how to use it, but that's absolutely how you find all the people who match your kit.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, let's see here. There's a lot of great questions come in here. Um, so Janet, this is a good question from Janet. So she uploaded her DNA info to GEDmatch. She can see in the one-to-many a lot of the kits that match. Can her DNA show if a match relates to her maternal grandmother or to her maternal grandfather? So if she wants to figure out what line are they from, I think you touched on this, but maybe what would you recommend to Janet here?
Okay, so in order to know if it's from your maternal grandmother or your maternal grandfather, you would need someone descended from their parents, which is typically a second cousin. So get a second cousin from each side to test for you. And that's how you do it. That's what I've done.
So second cousin from each side
Right. In
can
other words,
get you.
my grandfather, my father's father was born in Norway, and each of his parents was born in Norway. So a second cousin from each parent of the grandparent.
Of the grandparent. Got it. Oh, I think that's a really good method that you're not just relying on the matches that are there. You're actively trying to get more people on GEDmatch that will help you in your specific research case. And these are people that you should be able to figure out who your second cousins are. Ideally, you've got enough family in your that you're close enough
And
to
third
understand
cousins
who
are
they
good
are.
also. Don't
Yeah,
neglect
yeah,
those third cousins. You sometimes share enough DNA with them to be useful. But second
yeah.
cousins are the best because you still share a lot of DNA with them. And
And
that's from one specific grandparent's line.
And if you know who they are and they're on Ancestry or 23andMe or whatever site they're on, you can say, hey, can hop over to GEDmatch, put your kid on there, and then that's going to help you understand who the matches are on GEDmatch that are not from the testing company you took the test on.
Exactly. And my shtick to get people on GEDmatch is I tell them, there are tools there that there aren't anywhere else. I will happily do some free analysis for you if you do this. And I mean, because I usually manage to convince them.
Yeah.
But one of the hurdles is when they're not all that computer savvy themselves.
Mm.
As GEDmatch is a site that's easier to use if you're somewhat computer savvy.
Yes, it is. We're working on making improvements to make it easier for sure. That's something that we're definitely working hard at. The postage stamp DNA company that we've been mentioning a couple of times. It's called To the Letter. I'm putting it in the chat, to the letter DNA.com. I've never used it. Kitty, you've heard of it, so we can't vouch for it, but it does sound like some people have used it and have found some success.
Yeah, I've been considering using it for myself. Another, yeah, and another case on my husband's side, we were looking for one of those
Hmm.
stamps. It was my husband turned recently a first cousin to my husband has turned up, and she's from one of two brothers, neither of whom have had any children. Now,
Mm.
it was an unknown daddy case, but if neither possible dad has had children, how do you know which one? Sometimes, like with Beryl, you can tell by where they were when and how old they
Mm.
were. If they were 11, they're probably not the daddy. Okay.
Yeah.
But oftentimes, you just don't know which brother it is.
Mm.
So, considering, trying one of the stamps for that
Yeah.
case.
A question from Z. What's better, second cousins or a parent's first cousin? So like a first cousin once removed to them.
Um, your parents' first cousin would be
Yeah,
great.
parents first cousin. Yeah, or okay, so parents first cousin if they can get them
That
over
would
on
be even
GEDmatch.
better
Yeah,
than your second. I mean, because they're one closer to the grandparents in question, the great grandparents. Um, yeah, if you have some of those,
excellent.
the
And
older, the better. Try to get the oldest
yes,
generation tested while they're still here. It's
absolutely. And Jeff asks to find information about my grandfather. I need DNA from a second cousin or cousin of my grandfather's parents, um, or is it a second cousin from the grandfather's that his side?
a second cousin from the grand. In other words, someone descended from your grandfather's parents is typically your second cousin. They could be a first cousin once removed or a second
Hmm.
cousin once removed. But anyone descended from your grandfather's parents is going to help you research your grandfather.
Excellent. Okay, that's a great answer there. Um, let's see what else we have here. We are coming up on our time, so there are some other questions that um, we'll review. There's been a lot of great questions that have come in, and we'll see how we might be, to get back to those who have asked them. Um, Before we close out, I do want to remind everyone of the current DNA Day special that we're running right now. And I'm just going to bring up my screen here. And actually, I'm running into a permissions issue. So I'll just put it in the chat box because it's going to be easier that way. But if you go to the chat box, we're doing a DNA Day special, which is 25% off our tier 1. And so that is, and it's $75 a year, and you can use the code DNA Day 2025 when you go through the checkout process. So if you log into your GEDmatch account, and you'll see if you scroll to the bottom of the main dashboard, it says manage, or actually upgrade. There's a little upgrade button at the bottom, upgrade to tier 1. Click that. It'll take you to another page where there's a checkout. Choose it's only good for the 1-year subscription. Make sure I put that in there.
Oh, so
and you'll go ahead, Kitty.
So that when it renews at the normal price.
It'll renew at the normal price, yes, but you have to choose the 1 year.
Do you still have the 1 month subscription?
You can do a 1 month, and that's $10 a month recurring. But if you do the 1 year, it's $100 a year. But this gives you $25 off of that, so it's a really, really great deal. And then after the year, yeah, it will. This special's only, the discount's only good for 1 year. But if you're interested in some of these advanced tools that Kitty talked about, this is a great way to jump into it.
Segment search, yay!
Segment search, triangulation, clustering. There's all kinds of things. Auto kinship, the phase kits, Lazarus.
There's so much stuff. Yeah.
So much stuff. Oh, and I did want to say, someone who asked a question about combined kits, which are super kits, and should they remove the original kits?
What I do is I mark the original kits research, so
Okay,
that when a new relative does the comparison, they'll only see the combined kit. However, if you saw my particular one-to-manys, all those kits appear. All 3 kits I have for myself, or 4 or 5. So, but I can manage fine. And then I have too many kits on my homepage, but I use the new notes feature to remind me which one is the one I want to be using. So yeah, I just mark them research, the ones I used to make the combined kit. And guess what?
Yep.
I do have a blog post on how to make a combined kit.
Awesome. So keep those kits on there. Just mark them research. Use super kits. It's a great feature. And we'll end on that. So Kitty, thank you so much for being a part of this DNA Day webinar. Thank you for making the time. I think it's been very valuable for our attendees who've been responding and thanking us for this valuable content and presentation. So really appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I hope everybody had fun. You can always leave questions on my blog, and I usually get around to them within a day or two. I really love GEDmatch, and that probably comes across.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you all for joining. Have a great rest of your day. And if you want to watch this, it is going to be posted on our YouTube channel in the near future. Take care, everyone.